I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome back, everybody, back to Anatomy of a Movie. Today we are doing the dissection for R.J. Cutler's film, If I Stay. Now, I am your host, Marisa Serafini. With me, I have...
I'll start. Hi, guys. This is Sara Stretton.
Demetri Panos. Hello, everybody.
And you guys have been great about commenting and for all of our dissections, and you guys actually requested us to do this one. So here we are, doing If I Stay. Thank you very much for all your suggestions. Keep them coming, and we'll do more dissections for you. All right, your overall thoughts, very quickly. Sarah, we'll start with you.
Overall thoughts. I can definitely say I was emotionally affected by it. I cried 5 times in this movie. I think I'm still maybe kind of emotionally affected from it. Overall, I really liked it. I think what held together for me was the music. I know that was a key part that R.J. Cutler wanted for this film. It was a big part of the inspiration for the actors. And that carried through. And I'm also I'm a little biased because, like you, Marisa, I am a fan of classical music as well.
Yes. And
so the fact that it had this range was really interesting to me, that I could bounce around through different genres, and that really was the through line for me. And then we'll talk about the relationships, how it was shot, and I think that the choice to kind of not make it linear was also a strong play on their part.
Yes. Demetri.
Yeah, for me, this movie was a huge mixed bag that ultimately just ended up being a bag its contents was filled with a steaming pile of poo. The last half hour of this movie, I was going along with it because I thought that the positives outweighed whatever little negatives going along. Mm-hmm. And for me, I really liked Chloë Grace Moretz's performance. I liked how the music was juxtaposed, but specifically watching her play the cello. Knowing that she's not a celloist, I thought it was very great how they mixed her in, and she took cello lessons for about 7 months. But I couldn't necessarily tell that they were using a double at certain times.
Could you tell the CGI head?
I know. I read about the CGI head, and I was like, good play on their part. I mean,
movie magic. But
what was amazing with her is I actually felt the emotion. She could have overplayed that part doing it, but I really truly felt that character, Mia, through Chloë Grace Moretz, was passionate about what she was playing, and it made listening, and it made me more of a fan of cello music. And I was like, wow, I was very impressed with that aspect. I loved watching that character play the cello. And I to an extent, I like the parents, and I like there was a positive feel to this movie for the most part. But like I said, that last half hour, to say it fell off a cliff, it dove, and it just pirouetted, and it ruined it for me. I walked away from that movie going, it had something, and then it just killed it by just stupidity, Padme plot pointing, Man of Steel.
Why stupidity? Why do you say stupidity?
Couple of things.
I wouldn't say stupidity. I agree the last half an hour did slow down because all the stories have been revealed with the relationship, and now it's just what happens now? Now it's just waiting. But I wouldn't call it stupidity.
Yeah, for me it was just, it's bad plotting. And it could have happened in the book. I don't know, has anybody read the book?
I have not read the book, but this film was, based on Gail Forman's
young adult novel. For me, it all started with the grandfather, played wonderfully by Stacy Keach, came in and had that speech with her, and I call it. It was the Man of Steel Pa Can't Die syndrome, where, just to set this up, in Man of Steel, there's a scene in which there's a tornado coming. The Kents are in a car. They all get out to go over an underpass. Okay, so it's Ma, Pa Kent, and Clark Kent, and they forget the dog. So Pa Kent, instead of Clark Kent, goes to get the dog. The tornado's coming, upends a car. He gets pinned in the car, Pa Kent. He finally gets out. The dog escapes, and the tornado's coming, and Clark Kent can save him. And Kevin Costner nobly puts up his hand. He says, no, because your secret's too important, and he nobly, sort of kind of sacrifices himself. And in that scene in the movie, I'm going, what mother, what wife, what loving wife would say, oh, it's okay for you to die. It's like, I have a son who can save you, and we can deal with the ramifications after that, but she lets him die. In this movie, we have a grandpa who comes in and basically says, you can die if you want. I give you permission to die. This is his only link to his son, the only living relative. And to say, I'm going to make a sacrifice, you can die.
He didn't say, I'm going to make a sacrifice.
He goes,
I did not get that message at all.
I don't know of any grandfather who would ever, your last living relative, I don't know of any grandfather who would ever say, it's okay to die. You can die. No way. I don't buy that at all.
Sarah, what?
I didn't feel that way in the movie. That's not what it came across. I think it's a valid point. I think that when you really dig into it and you talk about legacy and how people feel about their family line going on, if you've lost that many people, that actually is very true. People, if that is the end, if you've lost so many people, you do cling to whatever you have left. Thinking back on it, I think that's a valid point. Did I get that immediately while watching it in the movie? No. While I was watching the movie, I guess I saw that he was at least conveying to me so much that he was in pain, that I was allowed, that's what I was more connected to in the speech, that I really wasn't completely processing from his angle, his thought process. I was like, oh my gosh, this man is in pain, and she is getting that piece that she needed to feel okay about it. And I was seeing it oh, this girl needs
to be urged to die.
She has nowhere to look. She's lost. And it was at least some sort of sense of direction, some sort of it's like when someone's grieving, someone tells you it's okay for you to be upset for a while.
Sure.
And to me, that was the feeling. It was it's to the extreme where it's we understand this is so hard. It's okay for you to feel this upset, for you to want this. I think looking back, being that's a strange motivation is true. It didn't read that way to me while I was watching it in the movie, at least.
Yeah, it hit me just as soon, because it was starting off as this emotional piece. And again, Stacy Keach, he was in Nebraska, and his character was so polar opposite. But it was,
for those of you who have not seen Nebraska, he plays a tough old man who kind of turns out to have such a awful streak.
Awful.
That you're kind of and it did stick with him. He did such a good job in Nebraska that you're kind of I don't trust you as much anymore.
But seeing him in this movie as the grandfather role, I was I always when you can come off of playing off of a role like that. Right. And I was going, oh wow, he's really okay, it's good. And it started off. But the moment he said, I give you permission to die, which is basically what he said. I'm whoa, hell, hold on 1 minute. This is no loving grandparent, no loving family would say, give up the fight. Not when there's the hope of there being
I get the message that you're trying to go for. I think you're taking it at face value. That okay, yeah, you can die if you want. I think it's more so because he's lost so much in his life already with losing his family, and now she has lost so much in her life is she decided to keep living and stuff. So it was really, and it's out of his hands. He doesn't have control of it, and maybe she didn't even have control of it.
The other moment,
it's just an odd conversation.
It is,
but to tell somebody.
I didn't mind
I would
if
say
it was
fight.
No, I didn't mind if it was odd because it was such an emotional scene that overlooked the I guess you can say you can die.
Yeah, I didn't.
A moment it does remind me of that I have found in the past in other movies I'm okay with is that that pivotal scene where someone's been mortally wounded. You know they're not going to make it. This isn't the same situation. She's in a coma. You don't know. But, like, you know what scene I'm talking about. They're in the war. Someone has, like, a spear going through their stomach, and, like, their best friend is there. Yeah, just being like, you can let go.
Right.
It's okay.
Or you can be like Arya and just turn around and walk away. But, you know, you're right.
But maybe that's kind of what they were going for, is like that type of instance of like you can release.
I just don't accept it. I don't accept it as a living relative when it can go either
maybe not
way.
Game of Thrones, but more terms of endearment.
Yeah, but that was terminal. Like that you knew. This was like, you know, it was weird because at that point I'm like, why is the nurse the most sympathetic? She's the one who's rooting for her to live. Like, you know, and of course, like I think the boyfriend, Adam, and such. But then, you know, that leads me to the other point where, you know, then the movie completely lost me. So you had that, and again, I'm going to say for the positive side, when she makes up the idea, and this was the Padme plot point. Like, again, and I'm bringing up Star Wars Episode 3, the line, you know, she's totally fine, sir, but it's as if she's just given up the will to live. And Padme just has these two babies, Padme Amidala, and, oh, Luke, oh, Leia, and, like, she dies. And because she's given up the will to live after she's just given up, like, she just had two babies. Again, I go, what mother would give up the will to live after giving... And now we have Chloe Grace Moritz's character, Mia, pretty much giving up the will to live, and she's going off into the light. Don't look into the light, Carrie Ann. And then we
I wouldn't say
music.
she was giving up whatsoever. I said she was definitely contemplating.
You know, she was about to head out the doors. She was going out the doors.
There's two more factors.
She was going out the doors until the music played, which, again, you're like, oh, how's this? Where's this coming from? And she comes back, and I thought it was a nice scene that she had the headphones on. I was like, oh, okay, nice audible. That's a nice audible key in there, and I like that. And it was playing out nicely, and then he took the headphones off, and it's like, oh, hey, look what's stashed underneath the bed here, an acoustic guitar. All of a sudden, he becomes the fucking, like, singing nun, and I'm like, wait a minute, he's an artist, like, what... Everybody gather around, everybody. I'm going to do a little song for her. I'm like, you're an artist who can record. You already had the nice thing, and you set up the headphones. You could have recorded the song instead of the kumbaya moment.
Yeah, but also that kumbaya moment, it was because throughout the whole film, we saw her say, you never wrote a song for me, and then this
but
was...
he's saying you could have done that in the headphones.
He could have recorded that song when you had the nice moment when he played. But instead,
if you record it, it's not as meaningful as your actual performing it.
To me, that blew it for me. I'm like, you know what would have made that scene great? If he sang the Smith's girlfriend in a coma. I would have laughed hysterically. That would have been great. But instead, he takes out, look what just happens to be here. An acoustic guitar for me to, like, I'm going to sing this song for you. It would have been nice had they continued that audible theme just with the headphones on that he record. I mean, he's an artist. And maybe he performed that song live, and that was a live thing for her. I mean, we still would have gotten the same message without that sappy corniness. And then I was completely keyed out of the movie. And I was like, oh. That's a bummer. So,
Sarah, did you like that moment?
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about that. Everything that you just brought up and you brought up, where, for instance, like her choice to walk towards the doors. This was my justification for it. I'm not sure if you agree with me or whatnot, but we were given at least that we knew we know that she knew if she walked towards the light, it was the end.
Right.
You get that hint of how she will die very early. Mm-hmm. What we're not given is, or what she is not given, is how she gets back in her body. Like, that's never something that she's not let on. It's not like, oh, I can sometimes move my hands or I can walk towards the light. Mm-hmm. It was, this girl's a little bit clueless. It's not a straight up decision where she's either walked towards the light or... she's still trying to figure out how to get back. Like, she repeats over and over again, like, they say, you have to fight. And she's like, I don't know how. Right. I don't know how this fighting is happening. So on that aspect, I'm like, okay, so she's a little lost. She only has one direction that she really can head, that she knows where it's going.
Right.
And then we got that turning point in the very beginning when she finds out Teddy is an orphan too, where she's like, you are my reason to fight. Right. I will not leave you. And this is a grief-stricken girl who then, 4/5, 3/4 the way in the movie, then finds out her brother is gone.
Right.
So now it's like, I have absolutely nothing. I think my boyfriend's gone. I thought I said goodbye to him. And my brother's gone. My grandpa's told me it's okay. And I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to get back there anyway. So I'm going to go to the pretty light because that's
what else?
Choice. What else do you do? It's like she's staring at her body. She's waiting in this room, what we assume to be for hours, just listening to people talk to her. Nothing's really happening. She's not like getting back in her body. She's just sitting there waiting, watching people suffer around her. And so that's how I went through it, where by the end, I was like, I kind of get it. I kind of get that you're really lost and really grieving and don't seem to have any alternative besides sitting and waiting and going towards the light, where you seem to find some sort of pull of her family or like her dad or something. There seems to be some inclination. That was my rationale for the whole thing. Back to what originally, where this ends up, where she gets pulled out by the headphones. Loved the headphones.
Yes.
I wanted some sort of line for like, I really wanted that to be like her playing. I really wanted him to have like gotten a hold of her like audition and it be like, that was you. Like, that was you.
See,
or something.
That too that would have been amazing.
That's something that I wanted.
As well. That actually would have been amazing more than the cello piece that has been. But I liked how it was the cello piece that sort of kind of wait before this. Back. She's more or less, she tells whomever after this piece. And she goes to find, and I was confused because I was like, why is this coming through the speakers? Because nobody knows what's really internally what's going on. So when she comes back and you found out that it was the headphones, I was like, oh, that's sort of clever. Yeah. I like that. That's a good...
It was a nice device.
It was a nice cue. It was a very nice cue for her to listen to that. And if she was going to choose to go out on that, but it would have been even like, hey, you know how you...
it was also a message that, like, if you do stay, you do have all this music, that you do have a reason to live. This is something that literally has been your whole life. It's like you're not completely lost just because you don't have technically your biological family. You still have friends, you still have music, you still have motivation.
She still does have biological family and her grandparents.
And her parents, but no immediate family per se.
Understood.
You still have motivation to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would figure that would have come... a lot of it at the end when I looked at it was, because Adam says, I'll move to New York, I'll make this work, and it's like, so all of that stuff inspired you to live when you had other things to
and
look,
a lot of the book readers were really upset about that. They said that's something that kind of this movie brought away from the book, where the love story was obviously a huge component of the book, but the book actually had more family and more of the grandparents and more of mom. And so I'm assuming that was a greater inclination of the realization of that one speech with her friend that you do have outside family. I think made more of an impact. Yeah. And then in addition, I'm bringing it back to the headphones. Yeah. Because it's an interesting choice that there was no explanation of why he picked that song. Because if you look at it not from her perspective, which is like she, all of a sudden hears this, but that he's going to put headphones on his girlfriend for one song, then that song must be the most important song you can possibly think of.
Was it the song?
So what is it?
Was it the song that when he took her to the concert that the celloist was playing? That's what I was thinking, but I had forgotten.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
And they played so much classical music
that I couldn't recognize what I needed. I needed a line. I needed something telling me why that was the song. I needed something telling me like, this is why I loved you. Like when you played this, like I will always I needed something.
I really know the that would have been an amazing script suggestion to say, hey, I was able to. I explained the situation to Juilliard, and I've listened to this, and this is you. But I've always you asked me why I haven't written a song about you, please take a listen to this. I mean, we would have heard it through the headphones as well.
Yeah.
I just, again, I
or if
thought
we went straight into
headphone-
his song on the headphones, and that's
Right.
what pulls her back. I don't know.
I just thought that, to me, the headphones was a nice touch, and it wasn't the singing nun, let me take out my acoustic guitar and let me sing to you in the hospital. That just sort of kind of, whatever goodwill I was having at the movie, those two incidences, which came at roughly the half hour, within the last half hour. I mean, because up to that, I was looking at some positive things. And for me, the positive things were, ultimately, they were good kids, right? Wouldn't you agree? I mean, they were good high school
head on their
kids.
shoulders.
Head on their shoulders.
They had motivation. They had goals in life.
And solid, good goals in life.
Yeah.
And sometimes teenagers aren't portrayed that way. And, and I liked that they had these goals and they had a passion. And they explored that passion, and I appreciated that. I appreciated how they had parents who were, well, she had parents, not him, but not Adam, but Mia had parents that were supportive. They wanted her to go to, like, they supported Julie. They supported whatever she wanted.
I love the parents.
But yeah, I enjoyed how they were supportive of what she wanted to do.
Sorry to go off of that. I loved how the parents, their role in her life, which is great because we know her parents are like punk rockish, growing up, and they were rebels, teen rebels, and then like they understand like young love and have fun. This is the time where you mess up in life. Right. So like I love that. That was that fun. They added the fun comedic element to somewhat of a darker, more toned down story, but also just like not letting, because they liked a certain type of music, and Mia loved classical. She was more serious, more gravitas kind of music, but they didn't let her feel bad about that. They let her be her own. They let her play the cello from hours into the night, and I loved how they were supportive in that way. Oh, absolutely. And I there was a nice scene when she was practicing the cello, and it was all hours of the evening. Yeah. And they were outside her door because they weren't getting any sleep because she's playing the cello at 3 a.m, and they're going, "Yeah, this is what we created," and the father said, "Yeah, this is ours. Like, we made this." And there was a proudness. Now, my one caveat about the parents is, being that there was such music fans, like, it would have been nice. I didn't see why there needed to necessarily be the split between rock and roll and classical, because there are so many rock and roll musicians who started off as classical musicians, or who were trained to be something else other than what they ended up getting into. And in rock and roll, there's an infusion of all various different kinds of music within it. I mean, ELO always has classical type violin in their music. Sting was a jazz bassist, and he infused that in some of the Police songs and later on in his solo albums. St. Vincent, I believe, was brought up playing a violin. You have so many instances where Pat Benatar was a classically trained opera singer. Yeah. So it would have been nice to say, hey, we love that you're I mean, she's learning from the basics and you're learning the best, but there could have been like there could have been the intimation that it could be infused with anything you want this to be, because you're learning the hardest thing to learn. And like sometimes there seemed to be a split when I think music is an art form. Like just because he's a rock and roller. I can understand that, but that also reflects her character too, because we see her go to concerts with Adam's concerts and stuff, and she's like purposely not having fun. She just doesn't enjoy it, and that's just her as a character. Therefore, that causes the split between the classical and the pop. If she did enjoy it and like, or at least pretended like she enjoyed it. Well, she always liked the music. She liked the music. Yeah. She just felt like a fish out of water with the crowd. She was definitely a fish out of water. And that's kind of how split. I felt like that she created the split. It wasn't really imposed by her parents. I felt like she created this like mental bubble that she was different, that she had to be classical. Yeah. And I think that like that is like kind of a realistic thing for kids to do, like to see themselves as different so they're not a part of it, or like to see herself as a little bit off and not in the right boat. Yeah.
And I think that what it did is it made the scene stronger, where she finally did accept that she could be part of it, where she does come out and join the bonfire and play the cello, and that's what made me happy, because she finally broke through. It wasn't everyone else's walls she was breaking through. She had to like break through her own, because she was the one causing that division. Yeah. And so for me, because I mean, I know that the directors, you know, I'm sure you guys heard, like, they all gave them all their iPods with the music, and I know her iPod in particular did have everything from classical music to classic rock, or what her parents would have listened to, and infusions of ones that did have classical instruments in more rock. So it wasn't that like the filmmakers were unaware of that existence or that it could be meshed. I definitely think it was a character thing, that she was creating this whole, like, she had to be alone and
she
not
liked her one thing.
Yeah, she didn't see what it could be until we get that scene, and that's why that scene's important.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, the other thing that I liked, I also you know, I liked the Juilliard ceiling in the bedroom, although, you know, dopey me is like going, where's the ladder? Like, how did he do that? Like, well, like that must have taken a long
stand on the
time.
bed, and then he would jump.
All that tape,
and
all that
tape, jump and taping.
Right, no, but it was...
I wish my boyfriend did that.
I got the scene, and then when she went for the audition, I was waiting. I was like going, well, she has to look up. I mean, and I was waiting for her going, when are you going to look up? Because you can't blow that scene. And then when she looks up, she got the smile on her face. I wish it paid off a little more. Like, I wish she truly said to him, you know, I looked up at the ceiling. You know, I did go to bed every night up until the thing, and I looked up at the ceiling, and you inspired me, and I believe it was because of that I played the best I've ever played in my life. I love you for that, because it really pushed me to go forward, and I wanted a little more of the payoff, but I didn't quite get the full payoff. But it was nice that
it definitely played its part. And that wasn't Juilliard, that was the San Francisco Auditorium.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I thought it was romantic, first of all. I mean, any boy to do that, awesome. And then just like, it shows how comfortable and how much she does love music. Even if she's scared about it, she can still do it. And no matter where she performs and whatnot, that's who she is, and that's like how she loves performing. And I thought that I saw the payoff when she looked up and she did smile, and that was good enough for me.
No, it would have been nice for her to say it was your, like, because she said, hey, I thought it was the best, but it would, for me, it would have been nice to acknowledge that, like, his efforts really, like, it sort of kind of seemed to go silent. And, like, it would have been nice to say, yeah, you really helped inspire me, because I looked up and all I could do was think about it, and I went right into my music, and I got into that zone. You broke the ice for me. I was so nervous, and just thinking of you and what you did, it really helped me along.
And the thing with Adam is that he was very accepting of her type of music too, which I loved. And you know, we're talking a lot about the music. We'll definitely get to the character development more so. But we're kind of working our way backwards. We're going very non-linear with this this podcast. But also, one of their first interactions, or when Mia's playing the cello in the music room and Adam walks by in the hallway, and just even from that small moment, that's like, yes, this girl is talented, she loves music and intriguing and whatnot, and that shows that Adam just loved music in and of itself too, whether it be classic or rock or anything.
Diving more into character, like, how did you guys feel about Adam as a character in this, as the leading man?
I liked him, and played by, of course, Jamie Blackley, who is British, and I didn't expect that. So I mean, that was pretty surprising. Very good on his part for losing the American accent. I did enjoy this character only because we've already established when the teenagers in the high school, they're like, he's the lead singer of the band, he's this, he's that, and we already have established that he's like popular, he's probably from stereotype, like more rebellious, out of her league, whatever. And then to find out he's kind of completely opposite, and to break that stereotypical belief, I found that really refreshing.
Yeah, I found both their characters refreshing. I found his refreshing because, again, he's in a rock and roll. He's in high school. Okay. We've seen a ton of teen movies. Amongst us, we've seen a lot. And one common thread is that there's always a party and they're always getting drunk. That's a motivation. His motivation, like, he wasn't an alcoholic. He you know, I'm not saying he didn't tip. He had a shot or whatever. But he loved doing what he...
responsible rocker.
He was a responsible
Yeah, he's
rocker.
very responsible.
Well, but, you know, again, sometimes when, you know, maybe, I don't know. I just think that sometimes with a teen movie, it's sort of kind of refreshing to see kids who are responsible and, you know, who have a goal.
Perfect. And
exactly. Because he wasn't perfect. I mean, you know, but yet they're good kids nonetheless. And this is why I like movies like even Superbad or the John Hughes movies. Ultimately,
Love John Hughes.
they're good kids. And they are responsible kids, even though they get into trouble. They're responsible kids. So I liked him, and I actually thought that their chemistry together worked. And there are even aspects of their romance that actually, you know, worked because I felt it was sort of real. When you're graduating high school, there are so many unknowns. Whether you're into music or not, you have a love in high school, they may be going to college over here, you're going over there.
And I think they showed that pretty well with
agree.
relationships. I found that very believable. It's like you are getting older, you are going separate ways to fulfill your own personal dreams.
Yeah, and it did deal with it. I thought it was realistic. It didn't matter that they were both pursuing music, but in different parts. I felt at least it brought it up. It was refreshing to me to see a young adult movie played out where nobody had to take charge of a revolution. Nobody needed a crossbow to do it. We didn't have to, you know, it wasn't dystopian. It was a little more grounded. I felt that the kids at the beginning, they were grounded. And like I said, I liked the parents because they were supportive of the relationship. They were supportive of Mia. To me, a lot of those parts ended up being somewhat refreshing to me. I was like, this is a good, interesting, this was an interesting way to portray kids that we're not getting a lot of in movies today.
Yep.
I think so. You know, those are some of the more I did have positive things about the movie.
Yeah.
It was just the negatives outweighed them.
Sarah, what were your thoughts
on Adam?
about Adam?
I really liked his character. One of the layers that I found surprising that I really liked was it was to me it was like pretty subtle. It wasn't too in your face, where they talked about his family and about how his family wasn't there, and so how he constantly was like worried about abandonment, but how we got to actually see that he was the one who was more physically abandoning her.
Right.
And I thought that was just like an interesting little just note that they added in for him.
And I think it's sometimes you have to leave first before someone else leaves.
Yeah, but it's also that sometimes people they put characteristics that they're familiar on someone else, and they don't see them actually doing it themselves. They're so conditioned to kind of react a certain way, and it's like the one way they're trying not to react is what they're actually doing.
Right.
And to me, that was just like an interesting little note that they added for him. They didn't make him the perfect boyfriend who she needed to come back to.
Right.
They didn't. And so they just switched him up a little bit. They didn't make him Prince Charming, and they didn't make him the horrible rock and roll guy. They tried to fit him somewhere in the middle, and give him different layers. I did believe their chemistry when they were together in their scenes together. I did feel it. My one qualm was I wasn't completely sold when they talked about each other, not in the presence of each other. Those scenes stuck out for me. When
the particular scene when Adam's talking to Mia's friend on the roof.
Adam's talking to Mia's friend on the roof, or when, I don't know, they would have like phone calls that they were actually detached from each other, or when Mia was talking to her mom about him. Maybe it was just because I missed them on screen together and I liked the dynamic they had and you could feel it, but it kind of would dissipate when they were separate. Not horribly, not anything that I was like, oh, this is a movie they have no feelings. Right. But it was a little bit of a change that I noticed, and so it was a factor for me as I watched.
Okay, I agree. I did like both of their chemistry on screen when they played off each other so well.
They did,
and the fact that yes, he was the more rocker and he was classic. that was a nice mix in and of itself,
I'm a little
too.
bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll kind
Exactly.
of thing. So classic
And therefore, I thought there was a nice balance of each other. And that
And I wonder, I think that, I don't know if you guys read this, but I heard a rumor that they were together for part of this filming, like in actuality, like the actors.
You know, I had read something where Chloe said that they had hung out, but they were, according to her, they were just friends. So whether there was any on-set romance, that I don't know if they were together. I would have bought it. I mean,
it's been rumored, but it's like it's an interesting.
But she's
I know.
that.
Chloe Grace Moretz is with
someone else.
The Beckham.
Kid. Yeah, I saw
the
that this
son
morning.
of David Beckham. I forget his name. Currently, right now, as of September 2014.
Yes.
We'll see about that. But what did you think of Chloe's character and how she portrayed Mia, and the fact that she took 7 months of training to learn the cello. She is a fan of classical music, but I think she played, for as physically demanding as playing the cello is, I think she sold it pretty well.
Well,
despite the fact that they did,
they ended up
CG
using a double for her.
But
Yeah,
she
I
said
didn't-
after all of that, and with the movie magic, she said she came out of the movie with a deeper appreciation
For music,
for
yeah.
classical music and the technicality of everything.
I think that I'm sure a part of it was like a little bit disappointing that she had trained so hard and then they couldn't use her. But I think she probably, despite our use, learned so much from practicing that hard.
Yeah.
Like just putting that in your body every day, like having that mentality. It's research. It's knowing so much that, like, even if they had told her from the get-go, hey, we need to use a really strong cellist from this. We're getting this girl from Juilliard. Like, great. So you don't need to learn. Like, I would have been like, but you should learn anyway because it's going to give you so much. So I think all in all, it added to her performance that she already had to do that. And it probably was allowed her to tap in more to feeling the music.
Yeah. I mean, until today, like with the CG head and the double, I was wondering because she looked like she was performing to me. And if they were doing, there were good cutaways, to put in a stand-in. Again, I felt that I thought she captured the emotion of, like, I got into her moments when she was playing the cello going, oh, it looks like she's playing the cello.
Yeah.
Like, I was buying into it, and
I bought it.
yeah,
I was like, wow, she
bought
can
it for the
play
most
cello
part.
now.
Yeah, and I thought I think she's a fine young actress. I was at Lionsgate when we released Kick-Ass, and as Hit Girl, and at the age that she was at, that was the most talked about aspect of Kick-Ass. And in fact, many reviewers and many audience, if you talk to anybody, they say it was Hit Girl's movie.
Yep.
So Chloë Grace Moretz had that movie, but she had to say some pretty vulgar
Nasty
things.
words.
And her parents were great, and the director was great to sit with her and say, okay, this is what we're gonna have her say.
Yep.
And but she did it. She was fantastic, and I was like, wow, she was so good in this movie. I'd like to see what she does. And she's definitely, I put her in the Elle Fanning category. I mean, I really think she's I think she's our future.
I have just a quick question. I don't mean to play. Did you mean to say Elle or did you mean to say Dakota?
Dakota. Because
Elle.
Dakota, she was actually in the
Because-
running with Dakota Fanning for this film.
Yeah, no, because I think Elle Fanning's a better actress than Dakota.
Okay.
I'm a big Elle Fanning fan, but I'm a big Chloë Moretz fan, and I love the choices that she has made in movies thus far, from Kick-Ass to being in Carrie. But one of my favorite movies that she's done was Let Me In, which is the remake of the Swedish horror vampire movie Let the Right One In.
Yeah.
And she was so good in that movie, and that's when I said, okay, she's got the goods, and I think that she'll continually grow, and hopefully Elle Fanning, look, Jennifer Lawrence is only 23, 24.
Yeah, she
She's
just turned
23, I'm pretty
24.
sure.
So, I mean, she's only about 7 years ahead of, say, Chloe. But I think Chloe can get there. I think she's choosing some good roles. Even when she was talking about this movie, she said, I got to stretch my ability and I get to learn more. And you can see her as an actress doing that. And I just think she's good to watch. I think she's, I hope she continues picking like good movies, and I think she has some good people behind her. Seems like her family is supportive, and they keep her level as well. And I did not know that Dakota Fanning was up for this role.
Yeah,
as well.
She was up with this role along with Emily Browning.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, but the thing I liked with Chloe, because I have seen the Kick-Ass movies, and I mostly know her for those films, so I had like completely different. And there's only a handful of dramatic roles that I've seen Chloe actually portray. So I was more used to the Kick-Ass, hard-talking kind of person. But I was very pleasantly surprised to find out like all of her emotional scenes and just like how she portrayed it, and I thought it was really wonderfully acted by her.
I think it was an interesting opposition for me too, because I loved the Kick-Ass films. But we talked to her a little bit earlier about Stacy Keach, who's an amazing actor.
Yeah, and he's been doing it for a couple of years.
Just a few. Just been in a few productions. And, you know, so like the last movie he did, we talked about, or the last movie I've seen he did, Nebraska. We got that cruel thing, and it overshadowed a little bit of today, where I was like, of this movie, where I was like a little bit nervous sometimes when he was on. And then for her, I thought I was going to feel the same way. I thought I was going to expect this kick-ass girl. And so I was shocked by my own believability that she was so kind of meek in this movie. Did you ever see
Hugo? I mean, she was fantastic in Hugo, too.
Exactly,
and again, completely different
But
from
I just thought it was a really good twist.
From
I
Kick-Ass.
wasn't getting the carryover from Kick-Ass that I was going to be like, oh, and now she's going to be able to throw a punch at this rocker show, and all of a sudden she's going to fit in.
Right.
Like, I really did believe that she was like this kind of meek, more, you know, poised, smart, deep
And
girl.
Chloe did say that, like, if she goes to concerts, she would mosh pit.
Yeah.
She would have
And
fun.
so I think that's a really good, like, acting thing, that I believed that she could change all that and be completely someone else. I thought was like an interesting
And for me, she sold me, and I bought it, that she can play the cello. She could have so overplayed that, because you've seen actors do that when you know that they don't know how to play piano.
Oh, piano,
and they might
exactly.
overdo it, so you know they're not playing the piano. And it was all about emotion, and it was all about getting into, like, the scene where she was auditioning. I thought was great. I thought it was fantastic, and you bought, like, wow, that was amazing, even though it may not have been her. So, and she never, you know, she said she practiced for 7 months, but she never had any illusion that she could play the cello. And which is fantastic, but at least she does admit, she goes, what it taught me was the passion of music, and she has a new appreciation.
A deeper appreciation.
Yeah.
And the fact that her character also loves Yo-Yo Ma.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that because I grew up with classical music, and I've actually seen Yo-Yo Ma in person. Like, in person, like, I've seen his concerts. He's amazing cellist. And, like, the performance I went to, he went down my row. He was probably, like, 5 feet away from me. It was awesome.
Did you get his autograph?
No, but I got an amazing concert out of him.
That's awesome.
So, you know, it was just those little things that they threw in, like, just how much she did love classical music. The I Love Yo-Yo Ma sticker in her locker. So it's like, it was her life.
Yeah.
That was very apparent also in their production design, in, like, the T-shirts Adam wear. Like, they did put a lot of effort into just putting little references everywhere, and not calling out, being like, nice shirt, just letting it be part of their lives.
Right.
Yeah. And also, Chloe herself, she said when she first got the script for this film, she hadn't read the book, so she was simultaneously reading the script and the book at the same time. And she said from the book she loved the story of Mia's character and everything, and then she wanted to really portray the authenticity of the character from the book onto the screen, in the script. So she also worked with Gail Forman wrote the novel, but she also helped with the writing as well. And also Shauna Cross, who did the screenwriting.
Right. Well,
so she really worked with those two women to portray Mia as authentic as she could.
And it's interesting, too, because reading up on Gail Forman, the thing that I was, I think, most surprised about her is that she's not a musician at all. So, you know, which I find, you know, because music plays such a big part of this, and knowing how to, or learning to play and knowing how to play plays such a big part in this movie. But she also talked about, too, and which I found very interesting, is that she says that writers now are taking more part in the movies that they're selling their books for. and you know, she got an executive producer role, and that she was more or less as that role. She was a consultant with the director and with Chloe and with everybody else, which I think is really interesting, because she's right. There has been, and I think it was J.K. Rowling who probably changed that, because she was so protective of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That, you know, she did want to be one way, shape, or, you know, involved with the project, and then the woman for Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins is similar, and the woman that wrote Divergent too has apparently been consultant on like the scripts and everything, which is interesting, because for the most part what used to happen is you'd write a book, they'd buy the book, they'd send you a check and say, okay,
we're gonna do whatever we want,
and
we'll
done.
Have fun.
You know, see you later. But sometimes I wonder if a writer, how much do you take?
And also the differences with those writers, those are series.
Those are writers.
And this is an individual story.
Yeah, and there's a difference between writing a script and beats in a script than beats in a book, where you have, you know, a lot more time to do your story. So I just think that what Gail had said is an interesting, it's an interesting way in which the industry has been going. To an extent, especially with these young adult novels. But again, for a young adult movie, without having read the book, there were parts of it that were refreshing for me, because it's not a dystopian future, and the kids, I had a feeling, were sort of kind of real, and I like that. Like, you know, they weren't saving the world, they were just trying to get along in life and follow their dreams, and that's a good positive message, I think, for me.
I mean, I liked the environment that they were in, and like visually how the movie looked. The cinematography was beautiful.
I thought it was,
I think
they added a lot to take a book and to, you know, condense it down into a hour and 45-minute film.
Yeah,
you do have to make a lot of cuts. We think that they made a lot of cuts. I personally, and from just reading book lovers, that they cut out a lot of family time. And it was interesting to me that what they then added is they made so many visual choices. One, to this whole linear thing, also with a lot of the flashback footage, that there was scene flashbacks, which were very just like, okay, this is a normal scene, but it's just a different time. But then there were also kind of
the way back flashbacks.
The way back flashbacks of like early childhood.
Right.
Then there were like kind of the morphed flashbacks where things were blurry, where it was just kind of this different moment, where we also got alternate view flashbacks, like her mom in the like going into the body bag.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of elements were just added, and I didn't find it overwhelming. I just found it interesting with a film that was so chock full of story and of character and of all these different things going on, that they did add so much visually.
And I like the choices, because everything was so completely different and individualized in a way. It kind of reflects just the belief that when you die, your whole life flashes before you. And there's so many different things that happened in her life, and we could see all those differences. And I thought that was really visually well done. And also, you know, just the hospitals and the color palette of just everything, really. You know, when the present day time is like white and blue and kind of cold, but then the stories, the relationship flashbacks, you know, were warm, and you can tell it was family and happy at the time.
and you know, the John DeBorman, because I was like, I thought the movie looked good too, and it looked so good that in one interview that I saw, because the location is supposed to be Portland. They were actually shot in Vancouver, not too far away, I guess. But I mean, I thought the location was important, but the way that it looked. But then when I looked up John DeBorman, I mean, he's done a lot of TV. One of my favorite shows, like Justified, you know, where that takes place. Very styled, but it wasn't overly so. I guess another thing too, I was glad that they didn't make a supernatural element to this movie. Like, she wasn't a ghost that could walk through walls.
I agree.
Like, that would have been, it would have taken away. They could have definitely, I don't know how it is in the book. I don't know if she is
able to just move wherever she
I don't know if she's ghostish.
Yeah, I agree.
She had physical limitations.
Exactly. I like the physical element. They still kept the fact that she is still present physically present.
Yes.
Because you see when she's walking around and running around the hospital, all these people, like, there was a quick moment where, like, a nurse was, like, move her shoulder just slightly to have her pass through. So you can tell in all the actors that they had to, like, physically purposely avoid her. When also another situation when Adam's, like, looking through that glass door window towards the operating room and she's standing right in front of him. So you know, like, they're purposely not having any contact with her.
Right, which must have been difficult.
And also, and I think that just helps with the film budget as well. Just just to be practical.
Sure. Yeah, but I think if there were an ethereal component, it would have taken away.
It was a nice.
If you have people
choice.
walking through people and
Opening
and
the door farther than you normally would, so two people can pass through it.
And I almost got a sense too, although I'm not sure it was conscious or not, but it seemed that she was tethered to her body. Like, but then again, there were other parts where she was going all over the hospital.
You did,
but at the beginning, it was like she gets onto the ambulance, even though.
And you wonder what would have happened if she had stayed.
Yeah, I'm like going, oh, is she tethered? You know, what's the limitation? But all in all, it played out nicely that her spirit, her soul, was, for the audience in any case, a physical being.
Yeah.
I thought another just like small factor they added that was played off really well is recently in like TV and film, we see a lot of use of technology, of phones, of Facebook, of Twitter, and it plays in, and normally it's like we get like a full insert shot of like hands and like typing, and sometimes you're just like, oh, it's a little abrasive, calm it down. And I think that they did that well in this as well. For instance, when they do have the friend just show her the picture, and it's just very subtle and played off to me as like very realistic as our time right now. Or when she did do just like the casual, like whatever it was, like stalking of her boyfriend in class, and it wasn't like, let me fill up the whole screen as much with these pictures and like overwhelm you. It was just like,
also,
this
they
is
use
here.
the technology
I think it
as a
was done
necessity.
well, though, because when they did
agree.
use technology, it would go into a flashback.
Well,
or like when they showed a photo of
it was
the mom and her with the headphones when she was a little girl, it went back to that flashback. So they used it as a storytelling.
And they used the
I
cell
agree,
phone
but it
as
was
a
like
means of
it was just like
conversation.
it was just nicely done.
It wasn't overly done. They weren't constantly texting and twittering or whatever it is. Yeah, it was when there needed to be a conversation when he was elsewhere touring. She picked up her phone and they had a conversation, and then So yeah, I know.
I think they just dealt with. I think that's been a lot of
simple.
struggle for people in film sometimes, where it does feel abrasive, it does feel like overdone or like
It's too big.
It was just like, okay, it's there. It comes in sometimes,
and I think that
no big deal.
That goes with the directing. I mean, R.J. Cutler, who's more of a documentary filmmaker, he actually put on at the beginning of production, he had a cellist come to his house, and he invited the cast and crew members, and they put on a concert performance, and then went into this like pretty much a workshop of classical music, and just explained the history of music and cellos, and I thought that was great, and that was a great bonding experience for everyone to just like really understand what they're trying to do and portray the music as well as they could.
Yeah, I mean, he was this is his first narrative film outside of the world of documentary, and he was interested because he read the book. He didn't say why he was reading the book, but he read the book and he fell in love with the book. And he was like,
guys can't like just a little,
I don't know.
Teenage romance story.
I would be curious to know how the book got in his hands. I don't know if he has kids but he read the book. He loved it. His way of approach, like for his documentary, he says, well, documentary's like you get all the pieces and then you got to figure out how am I going to mold this like a piece of clay. He goes, this I have a script. He goes, I have a script. And I know what I'm going to shoot. It's a little bit different. He goes, but the main thing that both documentary and this narrative form, it's all about story. So, I appreciate the way that he approached, I appreciate the way that he approached it. I had no problem necessarily with his directing and
I think he did a great job directing and how to execute it, because if you think about it, the story does take place from Mia's perspective, and he's a documentary filmmaker, which is a very voyeuristic perspective on everything. So, and
great way to look at
we're
it.
seeing the whole world through Mia's eyes, just like a documentary.
Yeah.
would.
Well, Sarah, you brought up the point too, and I think it's important to note because you said there was they didn't rely on technology, that it was very like from a money perspective, it was natural, it was practical. The production budget was $11 million.
Only 11.
11 million. So, that's pretty good in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean they've currently, how much do we know? They're at least 38 million plus worldwide.
Yeah, it's 45 domestic,
now.
and it's like 51 worldwide. Now the total budget is 38 million. So Warner Brothers really kicked in. I mean, that far surpasses the 11 million budget.
Yeah.
And they hit it hard. They had there was a lot of outdoor campaigning, and
That's what's crazy to me is that the $11 million
to make a movie
was I thought a pretty good movie. I thought that actually even though they spent like $20 million, I thought that the marketing for this movie hurt it.
You did.
I personally did. Like,
Really?
yeah, I did not like. I didn't like the marketing.
How so?
It just seems like another love story. It seems kind of cute. I didn't get anything about like I understood they were musicians, but I didn't really get that was like there was a dream involved, or there was like conflict with that dream, or that it was about family.
Yeah.
All I knew is she was out of body experience, and that she had like a boyfriend that she like really loved, and it was what was holding her there.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I got. I didn't see any of the conflict other than she was obviously in a coma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I was getting. I didn't get anything about like her family, about how she was making this decision, about how she had passions. All I got was like, oh, it's another little love story.
Yeah.
And you see, when I first saw the trailer, there was a lot of music involved. I knew there was an accident going on, so you knew it was a dramatic film.
Yeah.
And I think just being a fan of classical music and her playing the cello, I was automatically drawn to it. I mean, I went to go see this movie when it first came out because I just
Opening
wanted
weekend.
to see it.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't think the marketing.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Didn't like it. I saw
Wasn't a
posters of it
problem.
everywhere, and I know
I
the
did,
poster
too.
caught on, and I know that
Poster was
whole like
everywhere.
yeah, and
Posters
like
everywhere, yes,
it
definitely.
spawned
Still
a whole
today.
yeah, it
It's out
spawned a
there. I
whole
saw
thing.
it like
It's
3
around
times on the way
Yeah,
here.
and it spawned this whole thing where I know like fans were creating their own like similar
I'm
collages.
glad you brought that up because I want to talk about fandom on young adult novels. But no, you're right. I mean, it's still all over the place.
That happened, but to me, it just made it seem like it's just a
Another
cheesy
cheesy
love
movie.
story
Do you
that
think-
there's not much else going on.
Yeah, do you think
and it was more than that for me.
the timing was good for this
For the
film?
release of the film?
Considering
absolutely.
we just had Fault in Our Stars like 2 months ago.
Yeah, but
3
in
months ago
today's distribution world, I think the timing couldn't have been better for this movie because had it come out, say, before Fault in Our Stars, it probably would have gotten creamed. It wouldn't. I don't think it would have made 40.5 million, or 42 million today. Just going back to the marketing, I'd seen the trailer. And for me, I'm a Chloë Moretz fan, and I was like, this looks like this could be a good role for her. And then when the movie came out and the reviews were what they were, that sort of kind of, I was like, oh, that's too bad. But I didn't mind the trailer, the posters and such. However, I think the timing for this movie, and I had a conversation with our good friend Ian Kaiser the other day about timing and release of the movie, because timing certainly helped Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it certainly helped this movie too, because let's face it, the past 4 weeks of movies, there's been nothing out. So
Well, summer's winding down, so
winding
that's
down,
to be
it-
expected.
It like died in like August. So when they released this movie on August 22nd, I don't believe it was #1, but it had enough breathing room. It got an A- in cinema score. So the teenagers who went to see it, they really liked it. So it built up a good word of mouth in order to get it to this $40+ million. Had it been released in May, June, or July, I think
It would have
I don't
lost.
think
It would have been
Lost
completely
in the
shuffled.
shuffle.
Yeah, so they picked a great time because there's really nothing else. There's not much to compete with it.
And maybe that's why they also had such a huge marketing push, because
Yeah.
they were like, wait, guys, everyone's talking right now about what is there to see? What is there to see? If you put in everyone's faces, these posters, maybe they're going to be like, Oh, well, there is that. Like, I think that's why
and for the
there's
teens too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the trailer was on. You saw Fault of Our Stars, right?
Yes.
Was the trailer on there when you saw it?
The If I Stay.
Oh, the
Yeah.
If I
It might
Stay?
have been.
Because
I've seen a lot of
trying
movies
to
since in
remember.
between.
Because that would have been, yeah. I mean, it would have made sense. I'm sure that Warner Brothers
yeah.
heavily targeted Fault in Our Stars for this. But again, I think that the marketing reached out to the crowd that they wanted. I think the release date that they picked was perfect, and that it's really ridden. I mean, because when you look at box office, the only thing you're really hearing about is Guardians of the Galaxy. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but to look and see that this movie is still in like the top 5, that you're like, wow. And the mere fact that it's 40 million, I was like,
And I also think it's, word of mouth, because when I came out of the film, I immediately told 3 people about it, that
Did
I
you?
saw it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was telling people, I was like, hey, I just saw this. It was pretty good. You should go see it.
yeah. And it's interesting because the Rotten Tomatoes score is a 38%, which not great, not good at all. However,
huge jump from Rotten Tomatoes to Cinema Score. Like that's a big division. I feel like normally if you got an A- movie, you're getting at least 80%.
We
like
had
that
that last week.
Yeah.
With The Game Stands Tall with 17%, and Rotten Tomato and Cinema Score was an A-.
That's crazy
It's
to
a
me.
humongous jump.
I feel like we
crazy.
don't see that big of jumps
Yeah,
from
it's-
those two sites.
Yeah, what the critics' opinion and then the audience opinions, and well, there's a huge disparity. But again, when you're talking to teenage girls, a lot of them may have read the books. I mean, I don't know, but an A- for word of mouth is really good. And I think since how many weeks between August 22nd and now? 3, 4?
It's been,
About
a solid 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're September 12th. I think that it's just perpetuated and it's had a nice steady stream.
Yeah.
The box office is coming in. I don't know how much repeat their business they're getting. However, I'm still hearing about it.
Yeah.
I still see they haven't taken the bus shelters
No.
and the billboards down yet. So, Warner Brothers on this movie, I think they're
just letting it ride.
Yeah.
They're just letting it ride until they have something that they can really.
Which is great.
And they should. And they should,
Absolutely.
because, we do need that filler. I don't want to call this movie a filler, but we need something that can get us to the Oscar season.
Yeah, and again, it's the way the movie has time to breathe, much like Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy, you're not going to change the quality of the movie. But however, again, had that movie come out in May, June, July, or
Would have got
August,
lost with the other Marvel movies already out.
and with Transformers and with Godzilla and with this, it would have done well. It would have gotten the same amount of great word of mouth, same amount of great criticism. But we've had so much to pay attention to movie wise that when a movie came out in August and there wasn't that much out, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy, hey, let's go see that movie. There's nothing else I want to see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go see If I Stay for the girls, because what else are they gonna see?
Well, Demetri, I don't think you're going to see this movie again.
No.
But would you listen to the soundtrack? Would you buy the soundtrack? I would. I kind of want to buy it today. After this podcast, I will go download it on iTunes.
I agree. I thought the soundtrack was absolutely amazing. I don't know if it's a movie I will buy. It's not a movie that I'm like, I got a good cry in there a couple times.
Did you cry?
I got very, very
Misty,
teary-eyed because,
teared?
of course, I go to the movie theaters at all the most civilian hours. So I'm surrounded by the teenagers, the women who love to cry.
I was in
and
this movie.
Of course, I had 2 women on both of both sides of me, just
Okay,
bawling.
a very embarrassing moment. I
did
saw it
tear up,
yesterday.
though.
I saw it yesterday at 11:35. I was the only person in the audience, and I'm like going, I just know that somewhere there's a male projection is going, what a whip. Like, because I was, and then just as the movie, like all the trailers went through, and I was like, this is my living room. Even when they said, oh, pick your seat, I was like, you're kidding me, right? She goes, yeah, pick your seat. I said, do you want to come? I said, I have a whole living room to myself. And one woman walked in, literally, and I'm like going, oh my God. I just know this will happen to me. She's either going to sit right next to me or right behind me, even though she had a whole theater to pick. She sat like 2 rows behind me. She's probably going, what is he doing here? Like, why is he singing?
It was
this in
me
his
and one
bi?
woman
It
who was
so-
probably by herself and in her 80s. And then I was the one crying, and I was like, the old lady better be crying. That sounds mean. Like, she was such a sweet lady. Like, she looked so friendly, and I was like, and I'm like crying, and I am like 3 rows behind her, and I'm like, stop crying.
I was surrounded by so many
It
crying
was
people.
eerie. But then again, it was a Wednesday. Yeah, it was a Thursday at 11:35. It was eerie, and I'm just
Mine
going.
was Friday at 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, listen, the movie's been doing well. Now soundtrack. I don't know if I'd buy the soundtrack. I liked
the covers.
Well,
They had a lot of covers in this
I
this
was
film.
impressed with Jamie Blackley. Apparently he sang all his stuff.
Sings
Yeah,
live.
and he
I
knows how to
didn't
play
know that.
guitar.
I didn't know.
He was in the cast of Spring Awakening, I believe, in England.
Okay.
So that's a pretty tough musical. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and
he has some singing chops.
he does.
And he has guitar chops too.
And I literally thought they brought in some, I don't know, a singer to do it. I didn't know that he did the singing. I mean, their music to me, it came off. They were sort of kind of like, for me anyways, it was sort of kind of like they were like a little bit Replacements, and then a little bit of Mumford and Sons. I was just like, I almost wish they were
like
a little
Mumford
bit.
and Sons.
Yeah, I almost wish they were a little bit edgier in the line of. Like Scott Pilgrim's band was. I thought that they were going to be a little bit more edgier, but it was
Scott
fine.
Pilgrim's, that movie was so more fast paced, so the music reflected that.
Right.
And then this one was more of a slower pace, so I can understand the more chill, more calm, more classical type
Just
of
a
music.
quick fact to throw it out there. He was a singer, done training for it. But for this movie, they specifically had him brush up with lessons from Simon Tong, who's from the Gorillaz.
Yeah.
And they had him come in and like make sure, just get a couple of lessons in there since everything was good. He had a lot of songs to sing.
And in the band that was in this film, his band, those boys actually performed together for a few times before they even started filming,
Yeah.
just to get that chemistry down and
I
perform.
felt that they were a band. I don't know, because something that came up is what was the name of their
Something Stone or with the
water,
W.
Watershed Stone or something
People-
White Stone.
I will find
Or
out.
something.
The band.
The band. Well, it's funny because I'd found an article that said, is Waterstone a real band? And I never got that sense. But then when I was thinking of Almost Famous, with I think it's White.
No, it's Fever Dog.
Like that felt like a real band. in a
Stillwater.
sense. Stillwater felt like a real band of that era. But it was, I thought he did a good job. I mean, he sold it as being a rock star or an aspiring rock star. Mm-hmm. You could see that, they played the clubs, and it had that good sort of kind of vibe to it. The music itself for me, I probably won't buy the soundtrack. I was curious to see, and I was curious, what band performed the songs? Because I honestly didn't know until I was researching the movie that it was actually him doing it.
There were a lot of covers in this film, and I tend to be a fan of covers and stuff. The one particular cover that I want to talk about, the Beyonce's Halo cover, actually sung by Anne Brun and Linnea Olsen. Chloë Grace Moretz actually found that cover online, and she suggested that song to the director RJ, and it made the film.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that was the song that was their sex scene song.
Yeah. And then
she found it.
And then we had the Smashing Pumpkins today, which I thought they killed it.
Yeah, same here. It was
probably my favorite scene of the whole film was the bonfire scene.
And it was her favorite day. It was Mia's favorite day in her life.
Just amazing how amazing it was, because it was that perfect mix of people singing, having fun, her playing the cello, and him doing the guitar, like acoustic guitar. It was just so well done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of the music. I probably, now talking about it, I will go buy it after this.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how the soundtrack to this is playing, because in entertainment news, you know, the soundtrack that we hear about now is Guardians of the Galaxy. I was curious
I was just
about
surprised.
this soundtrack.
Yeah, I was just surprised how much music was a factor in this film. I thought it was going to be a more dramatic story, but I didn't realize how involved music was going to be.
Music has also become a huge thing in the tween young adult film, and honestly, you have to give credit to Twilight for it. I really think that franchise was what started this whole buying the soundtrack thing or releasing the songs early. It was huge. I mean, obviously movies have had wonderful soundtracks and scores for the years, but I think that Twilight really started a phenomenon with how many people bought theirs. And now it's become a thing that if you're going to have a teen movie, you need to have all over the map.
I mean, I'm going to go back.
I would kind of go against that a little bit. I mean,
I totally think it inspired like the Hunger Games,
but
and then bringing all
if you
these
think
artists
about
on.
like big films like Harry Potter, Star Wars, people buy those soundtracks before, and those are just like straight up composing
more
music.
Yeah. Well, no, if you want to talk, I mean,
But the trend
I
to
can
buy
go into-
soundtracks was way more popular than Twilight has ever been.
well, Star Wars is a different category.
Yeah, score.
I mean, I can talk
But
about
buying soundtracks
Well,
has
I'm
been a
talking
big
about
thing
like,
before
but
that.
I'm talking about like added music, like not necessarily score.
You're talking about like finding the popular artists, or
I call it
or
like
sorry.
source, and movies. We'll go back to movies like Beverly Hills Cop. There was a time where movies, Ghostbusters, where the music in the movie was selling a soundtrack to like crazy numbers. That's when both the movie business and the music industry sold things differently. Today, I do agree with you. Twilight, I mean,
For the
before
tween
Twilight, we had
market.
like the Spider-Man movies and things like that. Now things are downloadable. I'm not saying that Twilight reinvented the wheel, but for the young adult novel, it made it big to sell some more music. It sparked it.
Yeah.
Hunger Games doesn't necessarily have... I would say it's a little bit more score driven until the end of the movie where they get like a Taylor Swift to do a song. This one was
the actual movie for Hunger Games. I would agree. But they have a whole publicity stint about the soundtrack that they give, where they have some like the biggest names bands.
They make an alternative soundtrack to sell,
which is huge, and I think that comes from this whole young
Twilight.
Yes,
because Twilight did the same thing, and again, putting music into movies is not a new thing. In many cases, it's packaged. The music people, they vie for their artists to be on an album.
Yeah.
And again, and this dates back, even before me and such. But I look back to the 80s, where soundtracks were huge, and they got play on the radio like a lot. So a movie that gains that attention, they can get a lot of people to buy a soundtrack. Now, this doesn't have...
But even this soundtrack has Bach on it.
Well, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see...
It has a nice variety.
It'll be interesting to see how... I'm interested to know about the sales of this soundtrack. Because, again, it's mostly of a band that doesn't exist, but they played their own music. So I'll give them that credit, because I didn't know that. And it didn't have much source music. Like the Smashing Pumpkins song is a cover... It's not the Smashing Pumpkins playing that, so I don't know. It's interesting.
But sometimes covers sell amazingly.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, hello Glee. Thanks. I mean, that's all of Glee.
Point taken.
There you go.
It's absolutely correct.
Anything else about this film? I overall, I fairly enjoyed it. I thought visually it was well done. Acting, of course, Chloë was amazing, and we got to look out for Jamie Blackley too. I think he's definitely on the American list of up and up people, even though he is British, but we should definitely look out for him now.
we love the Brits.
Yeah, I mean,
we do.
He was good.
For what this film was, for a young adult film, I thought it was really well done. Sarah.
I mean, I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but I enjoyed the music. There were some really good scenes that got the emotional reaction I think the filmmakers were looking for out of me. And it was interesting. I mean, I don't think I'm going to buy this movie, but I did enjoy watching it. Or at least I was sad watching it, but sad in a good way.
Yeah,
It made you feel something.
Yeah, it made me feel angry when I was done. I said, it had built up some goodwill, you know, and I wanted to touch it. I didn't want to come in like a complete hater and say I did find this positive aspects to this movie. I just felt within the last half hour, whatever goodwill with me that it had earned, that it just blew it all away. I can't buy a grandfather being okay with her, or with his only living relative at this point, his only tie to his son. I can't buy that dialogue. I really have a hard time giving up the will to live, and that's the way I saw it. She was going out to the light. She was going to open the door and say sayonara.
Okay, well, I'll end us on a positive note. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And even if it was that, like, I admit,
don't buy that stuff.
I'm a sucker for the sappy scenes. And definitely I enjoyed the sappy scenes in this film.
I'm a sucker for sappy scenes
Emotional
too.
scenes,
Except
yes.
telling people to
Emotional
die.
sappy scenes. I thought it was great. All right, where can we follow all of you to keep talking about amazing films? Demetri.
I am at DMovies1701. I think I'm up to 25 followers.
Yeah. Definitely follow him. You're constantly
blazing a path.
Blazing a trail on the Twitter.
Blazing a trail
on the Twitter sphere.
that everybody just seems to put out by just a little stomp.
And Sarah, you do not have a Twitter.
I do not.
And in the future, I think she will be. But you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV, even though we talk about films here. I talk about media in general.
You do, and I favorite some of your tweets, and you're kind enough to favorite some of mine.
There you go. And then you can follow all of us here at Anatomy of a Movie on our website. Check out our fun dissections that we have coming up down the pipeline. A lot of great films. We have the Oscar season coming up, so a lot of films to talk about.
Well, we've got the whole... We're going into...
Oh, yeah. We're
October, November,
going
December.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then you can follow us on Twitter at Movie Anatomy, and then check out all of our fun dissections. And we also get to your comments and questions and news-related items in our other sections that we have. So check those out, too. Thank you all for listening to the If I Stay dissection.
If I Stay.
And thank you for requesting this. And we
let us know,
about
since
it.
you did request us.
Request other movies if you want to. So
and let us know what you think about
out.
this one, since you did request it.
Exactly.
Did we do it justice for you? Is it what you had hoped for?
Exactly. Definitely check everything out. Thank you, guys. We'll see you for our next dissection.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.